We're going to take a couple minutes to look at an idea that could be more and more possible. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4, starring, of course, Tobey Maguire. Now, when we take a look at this, I want to cover a couple things. First off, we are taking a look at things that have been actually said and things that have actually happened around Sony, the MCU, Marvel, Disney. These are real stepping stones, real things that are making the idea of Spider-Man 4 more possible. Now, I think we all have some ideas of what we would want to see out of a movie like this, so my question of the day to you is just that. If you could have a Spider-Man 4 with Tobey Maguire, what kind of story would you want to see? Do you have a potential villain you'd want to see? Do you have a potential emotional obstacle or sort of journey or characters you'd want introduced? I'm genuinely curious about that. Would you even want it to cross over with anything, like how Spider-Man No Way Home tied these versions together? I'm interested, but I do have my own ideas about that. I'm going to mention a couple of them at the end of the video. The reason I want to talk about this is because a lot of things have been said by Sam Raimi, a lot of returns have been happening in the superhero circle around Marvel, and a lot of opportunities and business, I would say, connections have been made in recent years that have made this idea much more possible. When we talk about this does not mean that I don't want Andrew Garfield back. This does not mean that I don't want Amazing Spider-Man 3. I want that to be clear. People treat this like a weird war between these actors. All of these actors like each other. They're all in a group chat together. All three Spider-Men, live action, like each other. Tom, Tobey, and Andrew. It's not a war. But there's kind of a whole timeline of Raimi responding to a lot of these questions and rumors. For example, in a CBR interview, my old nemesis, during WonderCon, he actually responded and said, "I did read that," referring to Spider-Man 4, saying, "but I'm not actually working on it yet. I mean, Marvel and Columbia are so successful with their current Spider-Man movies and the track there, and I don't know that they're going to go back to me and say, well, folks, we can also tell that story," saying, "I'm not sure, but I love all the new Spider-Man movies. I loved Spider-Man No Way Home. It was really super powerful seeing Tobey Maguire in it again." And you're going to say, well, Jay, right there, he said he doesn't know if it's happening, sounds very unsure, and that's the thing, it is unsure, but there's a lot more stepping stones here that are making it more and more possible that this idea could come to fruition. And it's worth noting that when this was being talked about, it also came up that he does have a history, Sam Raimi, now of working with the MCU, of working with Marvel. He is on good terms with them, saying, "I haven't talked to Tobey about it, but maybe Marvel has, or Columbia Pictures, but I just worked with Marvel on a movie called Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, so I'm on great terms with them. I'm sure I would hear about it if it was in the works. I think so. I don't know." But actually back in 2022, Raimi also said just straight up that he was open to the idea of directing a fourth Spider-Man film at this point, and he actually expressed interest directly in working with Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst again, saying, "I've come to realize after making Doctor Strange that anything is possible. Really anything in the Marvel Universe, any team-ups." And this was in an interview with Comic Book. He said, "I love Tobey, I love Kirsten Dunst, I think all things are possible. I don't really have a story or a plan. I don't know if Marvel would be interested in that right now. I don't know what their thoughts are about that. I haven't really pursued that, but it sounds beautiful. Even if it wasn't a Spider-Man movie, I'd love to work with Tobey again in a different role." Because, this cast was very close. You have to remember, by the way, that one of the reasons Spider-Man 4 didn't happen was because Sony was stupidly at the time really rushing and pushing Raimi in the directions they wanted him to go, instead of in the directions that he wanted to go as a creative storyteller. Now, I've personally gone on record before and said that I enjoy Spider-Man 3 for what it is. It's not without a myriad of flaws, but I very much like it. That said, they pretty much gave him an ultimatum of, you have to have the script done by this time, we have to get it going, we have to get Spider-Man 4 out the door. And after he was sort of forced to include Venom and pushed in many different directions with Spider-Man 3 because of toy decisions and marketing and all kinds of other stuff that Sony wanted to do, Raimi just said basically, "No, I'm good." because he didn't think that he could deliver a good script and a good movie in the amount of time and with the constraints they were giving him. Which is weird to me because he did a fantastic job with 1 and 2, so it's so odd to me that with 3 they started really tying his hands, but that's corporations for you. I guess they will take all the credit for what individual creators do and then start acting like they know what's best, even though that creator and their team provided them the avenue of success beforehand. Unfortunately, Sony has done this kind of thing again and again. They didn't learn their lesson. They also did it with The Amazing Spider-Man 2. They did it to Andrew Garfield, the director Webb, and a lot of other people. Sam Raimi has expressed interest not once, not twice, but 3 times now in making this movie. We're going to get to the 3rd time in a second. He's now worked with Marvel in the MCU directly with the Doctor Strange sequel. And of course, as well, it's worth noting that Tobey Maguire actually came back for No Way Home, which is a big deal. Actually getting back the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi Spider-Man to canonically appear in that movie and expand his story, and also allude to more things going on in his universe with his relationship with Mary Jane and some of the villains he's fought. It's a big deal, just like it was a big deal to get back Andrew Garfield. That's yet another stepping stone in the reality of possibilities of bringing these characters back. But of course, actually, I believe at the beginning of April, Sam Raimi was asked again about Spider-Man 4. He was actually asked by The Wrap, and he went on to say that I think if we were to make a 4th Spider-Man film, we'd have to figure out the journey that Tobey Maguire's character would be going on and what obstacles he had overcome to achieve that growth personally, which, by the way, that right there, that's the reason why 1 and 2 are so good, because they're very clearly directed off that idea of Tobey Maguire Spider-Man's emotional journey and what he has going on. And he went on to say, and I hope that the villain would be chosen based on a representation of that obstacle, which one also ties into the ideas of why Spider-Man 3 had so many frustrating problems, because yes, while Harry was a representation of that obstacle and Sandman was a representation of that obstacle, Venom kind of wasn't. He was kind of just there. I liked him, but he was kind of just there. But that said, this is a 3rd time publicly that Raimi has expressed an interest in Spider-Man 4. But also, we have another on-screen appearance of both the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man that a lot of people don't mention when talking about the potential of a Spider-Man 4, and the fact that Sony is still acknowledging those versions of the characters even today. One of those things is the fact that they showed up in a very quick blink and you'll miss it scene in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Now, during this movie, there's actually a point where canonical events are being discussed, where I would say the origin story of Spider-Man as a mythos is being discussed. How Spider-Man usually loses someone very important to him, and that's what causes him to become Spider-Man. And during that scene, they do show Andrew Garfield and, of course, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, where you see into the backgrounds and origin stories of various Spider-Men. Again, another on-screen acknowledgement in the modern day by Sony of their past Spider-Men, tying them into a modern film. But what's interesting is even Tobey Maguire himself, which you can't make this movie without, did express some interest in returning to the role again, and actually was very happy with his role performance and the story of Spider-Man No Way Home and how it handled the characters. Companies look at numbers. They don't just look at what we want. They don't just look at what stars and directors want. Unfortunately, that's just not how the world works. So you might think, well, what numbers can they possibly look at other than the fantastic box offices of previous Spider-Man films? Well, if only there was a way in modern day to gauge interest in these old Spider-Man films. Oh wait, there is. Spider Mondays was an idea kind of introduced this year, which was the idea of re-releasing these older Spider-Man films back in cinema. But it only released in about 470-ish theaters. I believe it was 467 exactly for Spider-Man 2, for example. But IGN actually broke down the numbers around what kind of money this made. And for just releasing in 467 locations only in America on a Monday, which is just the most niche release ever, and I don't know why they decided to do that, this film still went on to make something like $805,000 for the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2 in one day for a re-release of a film from the early 2000s. It went on to make close to $1 million right there, just from this niche release of just a few hundred theaters. And what's impressive about this is when you actually look at the data around this, this movie was number 2 at the box office for that day on April 22nd for its re-release. But what does that mean? Well, was there anything else going on? Okay, well, Alex Garland's new movie, Civil War, which was the biggest movie at the box office that day, it only made $925,000. It only made $100,000 more than Spider-Man 2. And it was released in way more theaters, like thousands of theaters. So Spider-Man 2, in a fraction of the theaters, in one day, only fell about $120,000 behind the top grossing film of that day. And what's interesting about that as well is that it was above films that day like Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. Films that are new, very new. This movie is raking in money. According to Sony, these re-releases so far, as of I believe the 22nd, had basically made them something like $1.5 million off of old Spider-Man films. And that was just as of when these numbers were reported. My understanding as well is because Spider-Man 2 finished on April 25th, it actually went on to make over $1 million total as a re-release of a film from the early 2000s. That's pretty impressive. In recent years, you've had all these comments, you've had all these business, I would say, dealings and relationships reestablished or established again or for the first time. You've had all these creatives express interest. You have the box office success of over $1.5 million as of days ago, which has gone up since then. I believe now it's at something like $1.8 million for these re-releases of just the Raimi movies. And you have Hugh Jackman back, confirmed for at least one film to star alongside Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool and Wolverine. To me, Spider-Man 4 is looking more and more possible every single day. Now here's my question. Would you want to see it, and what would you want to see? Personally, I think that with a Spider-Man 4 film, it would be time to sort of work on passing off the torch. I love Tobey Maguire. I think he's getting a little older. A character I have always personally wanted to see is Mayday Parker. I've always wanted to see the daughter of Spider-Man on film. I don't think that's a direction that they will go with Andrew, because even if he does come back, he only got 2 films. It's a little early to work on passing off his legacy to someone else, and he's still fairly young compared to Tobey. I don't think that it is a direction they would ever go with Tom, because Tom has already gone back and forth on his long-term commitment to being Spider-Man, and he has as well expressed interest in eventually passing the mantle off to Miles Morales. This is an angle that I think could personally work at some point with the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and even allow Sony, Raimi, and others a universe, a new protagonist, and sort of a playground to work with that is outside of the MCU and outside of the rules of the MCU. That said, I'm interested to hear your thoughts down below. You might have a wildly different take than me. That's kind of what I'm thinking for this. I would love to see it, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think it's possible? Do you think it's not? If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe for more content. We have a Fortnite code if you want to support this channel, DJAY123. We also do, of course, as well, have our own merch store, CosmoBunny.shop, where we sell all kinds of wonderful stuff. It is handmade resin pieces from comic books and manga that were damaged, that were unable to be sold. My wife Jill actually takes these from local shops that aren't able to sell them. What she does is she takes the paper, she takes this art, she turns them into something transformative and beautiful for your home. Coasters, keychains, trays, more. And you know what? We recycle the rest. We use recycled packing materials. It's just a great business. I love it very much. Use code DJAY123 for 10% off your first purchase. That's also our Fortnite code. And there is handcrafted, handmade jewelry over there as well. Have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shway.